The Washington Nationals fell to the Colorado Rockies 1-0 yesterday, but just because that happened does not mean there's some good to take away from it. Josiah Gray flashed his ceiling just yesterday, and I'm going to talk about what that is specifically right after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Ryan Clary, and I have taken my passion for this team here in DC into podcast form with the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day. And guys, let's do some housekeeping real quick. As we are heading into the second weekend of baseball for the 2023 season, the Nationals sit in last place in the NL East at 1-6. The Philadelphia Phillies are just above them at 1-5. The Mets are 3-4. The Marlins are 3-4. And then the Braves are 6-1 after a pretty crazy comeback win last night with Juan Soto flashing the leather against them to save a run in that eighth inning. The Braves came back in the ninth to walk it off with Orlando Arcia. But again, that's just some housekeeping. Today, we're going to be talking about Josiah Gray and what he did last night against the Colorado Rockies. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Before that game, we were all a little concerned going into Coors Field with Josiah Gray and all the home runs that he has given up throughout his career. Listen, there's a track record of this. We were talking about it at Coors Field. As we know, the ball flies there. It's common sense to everybody in baseball. The high altitude. I don't know the science behind it, but I do know that ball loves to leave the yard at Coors Field. And Josiah Gray, his whole goal yesterday was to keep the ball in the yard. Show us the improvement that you have done this offseason. Show a little bit of the slider, which he did as well. The changeup, the fastball, the command, all of that different stuff that goes into a good outing. Josiah flashed that yesterday, and that is a big deal for this segment here. Listen, Josiah Gray was traded for Max Scherzer practically. And when you're traded for someone like Max Scherzer, who is not only one of the better pitchers in all of baseball, but a legend here in Washington, D.C., the expectations are going to be unfairly set. And I think that's what people did from the get-go when it came to Josiah Gray. But he's not Max Scherzer. And people don't really fully grasp that yet. I think a lot of people went into that trade thinking that we were going to be getting some top-of-the-line starter, a one starter on a good team. That's just not the case. And that's not the expectations that should be set on him, because those are unfair expectations for anyone replacing Max Scherzer. You can't replace him. You're not going to. If you're thinking that we're going to be getting Max Scherzer in that Josiah Gray deal, it wasn't going to happen. That was never supposed to be the case. He's a 2 to 3 starter on a solid team, and that is just okay. That's a Steven Strasburg and a Patrick Corbin. Is he even going to be those two guys at their prime? Who knows? I'm not here to tell him that he won't, but it's hard to guess that he will be, because we saw what those two guys meant to us in 2019. They were basically aces of the staff. So Josiah Gray, here's the thing that we need to get nailed down here on today's show. He flashed his ceiling of what he could be if he was consistent. And again, Josiah Gray yesterday had 19 swings and misses just of him and his slider that showed up to be 11 swing and misses just coming from that slider itself. Listen, here's the thing about Gray. When he shows his dominance, that is when you get the best version of Josiah, because we've talked about what he can and can't be. When he is at his best, he is one of the Nationals' best pitchers, if not the best. That's how good he is. But again, it's when he's consistent. And so the jarring thing of this is that when you have a pitcher that has a home run problem, going into Coors Field at a field that plays small, that's like letting a sugar addict in a candy store. You get what I'm saying. That's a tough situation to be in for Josiah. Yesterday, only giving up 1 earned run, looked real solid. That's the kind of stuff that we want to see from this team. And that is part of the development that we have talked about in 2023 and what means the most for the Nationals. The wins aren't going to come in that win column. We know that. We should know that. I obviously want to win some games. We all do. But at the end of the day, I would rather develop some of these young guys than win 80 games. Those are empty calorie wins, in my opinion. This year is about development and seeing Josiah Gray take this step up in an environment that we didn't really expect him to, just because of the issues. The home runs at Coors Field, they don't go too well together. But yesterday, it did. Josiah Gray kept the ball in the yard, and that is part of his job. Because that is the thing that we continue to talk about with Josiah and all the mistakes that he has made. But when he flashes what he can and can't do, that is when we see the best version of himself. But seriously, Josiah Gray is no joke to be had when he is actually at his best, because that is when the Nationals are also at their best with Gray. Because we know this, he should have been the opening day starter. No question. Patrick Corbin should not have been out there. It should have been Josiah Gray's start. But again, seeing this in start number 2, going 6 strikeouts, 6 innings, working out of a 1-out jam in the 6th, Davey trusting him, letting him go finally. This is the stuff that we want to see in 2023. And I think we will continue to see more of it as time goes on. We only have a limited time today, so I do want to preview Mackenzie Gore today, starting from the Nationals real quick, because we got to talk about the rest of April's schedule coming up for the Nationals, because this is a must-win series in my mind up in Colorado. The Nationals have to get this done if they want to have success in the month of April. And if we're talking about wins, baby, wins, we need to talk about that. Let me talk about Mackenzie Gore's start real quick today for the Nationals. As I've always said, I believe Mackenzie Gore is the best pitcher on this staff. And here's the thing. Gore's biggest task today is literally out of his control. It's because of the Nationals' run support. Josiah Gray yesterday, the Nationals scored 0 runs. That is the part of this process to where it is the most frustrating part of it, because they can't even control their own success when you have 0 runs crossing the board. And as we still sit here today, the Nationals have the least runs scored in all of baseball. That is the issue with this team so far. And to actually go into a start, meaning Mackenzie Gore, if he gives up 2 runs, we could be out of this thing. So that is his biggest goal, and it's not even his own concern. But again, a lefty in Coors Field going against a bunch of right-handed bats with the Colorado Rockies. It could be tough, but again, I believe in what Mackenzie Gore can do, because it's pretty evident to me that this team right now is going to circulate around Mackenzie Gore, and that is the guy. He is your one starter if you were to come up with one. So to see him out on the mound today, it's the same thing with Josiah. Try to get run support out of his control, obviously. Pound the strike zone, limit the walks from Gore, and then let's see what can happen and let him loose. Go 6 innings, limit the walks, and get some punchies. That is the goal for Mackenzie Gore today. Because we can't really have this anymore of the I've given up 2 runs and the game's over because we can't score on this offense. Nuh-uh. I can't do that. And none of us can do that, in fact. So, enough about Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray now. we need to have some cold water splashed in our face because the rest of this schedule in April is a tough, tough, tough schedule. And I think if the Nationals were to have any success over this next month, it starts in Colorado because the Nationals are going to have to win this series in order to have success in the month of April. I'm going to get into that and tell you why it's so important to win this series. But before we do that, I have to tell you guys about our new sponsor, So Rare. And guys, Solare is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, Sorare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. Guys, this is what we talk about at So Rare. It's just real easy. If you like baseball cards, if you like collecting things, then my guys at So Rare, they have you covered just like the rest of them. Head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team a free player card, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's SoRare.com. Start playing today. And now we get into discussing about the rest of this April schedule. Also, if you're still tuned in here, we're going to be talking about the Fredericksburg Nationals opening day in just a few minutes as they have a loaded lineup for the low A, single A affiliate. We're going to talk about that a little later, but now it's to get into the April schedule for the Washington Nationals. When you're a poor team, the way that the Washington Nationals are at this moment, you have to take the wins when you can get them. Meaning, if you are playing a team like the Colorado Rockies, who aren't that good, you better win that series. Because most of the time, the teams that you will be playing this year are going to be a lot better than you, especially in the National League and particularly in the National League East. But now looking it up, after the Nats lose 1-0 to drop the 4-game series opener, 1-0 again, you got 3 more games to win this series. And again, the Nationals will have to win all 3 of these. And that right now is not looking too good considering we have Mackenzie Gore, our best pitcher on the mound today. I like our chances there. But again, you have Trevor Williams and then Chad Kuhl. We'll see what they can do. But here's the rest of the schedule panning out for the Washington Nationals. You have the Colorado Rockies through this Sunday, and then bam, you're headed to the flight. You're going to Los Angeles, and you play the Angels for a 3-game set. This is where it gets a little difficult. The Angels, a 3-game set. Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout. That's not too easy. Former friend with Anthony Rendon. Not too easy. And then after that, you're at home against the Cleveland Guardians for a 3-game set, and then another day off, and then you have a 2-game set with the Baltimore Orioles. And some people may laugh at that. The Orioles are pretty damn good. The pitching, it really isn't there, but the offense and the power that they have is surprising how good they are. And then you have you have the Minnesota Twins for another 3-game set. This is a tough schedule for this Nationals team to even try to compete in at this point. That's why the Nationals have to start collecting some wins now. Going 1-5 through your first 6 games is not really something that we wanted to see to start the year. In fact, it's not what we wanted to see. And again, 1-6, not 1-5. But this is the time where the Nationals going against a weaker team for a team, especially with a team that has been struggling with offense, like the Rockies and the Nationals. This should be an opportunity to where you have Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore going. These are games that you have to win. These are games that the fans want to win. Because I'm not different from any other reporter out there, but again, I don't back away from myself being a fan. I want to see this team win. I want to see this team succeed. I'm just like you guys. And I also recognize that when this team needs to win, like a game tonight with Mackenzie Gore on the mound, and then the following Saturday and Sunday, we got to start racking up some wins and eventually building on and then start to develop. Because I've said almost every single podcast, I understand this team is about development. But again, we want to see some wins. And you don't want to fall too far behind. And you don't want to be the laughing stock. Because that really doesn't really do too much with the Nationals in 2023. With all the different MLB lottery odds and all the draft rules that have come up for the new CBA, it's not just going to be you lose all the games this year and then you'll have the number one pick next year. Nuh-uh, that's not how it works. So we do want to see some wins. And the time is now with this series. Because not to mention, after you play the Minnesota Twins, then you have a three-game set up in New York against the New York Mets. And they're no fun to play against. Especially when you have Justin Verlander, who's going to be coming back from injury here, probably within the next week or so. And then after that, you play a Pirates team that has gotten better. Who I actually think could be a surprising factor in the National League. Are they going to win too many games? I don't know, but I don't think they'll be as bad as last year either. So the time is now for the Nationals. You have to start collecting these wins because the schedule is not going to look any easier for a rebuilding team. Because then again, if you look at the May schedule, it doesn't get much easier then. A 4-game set against the Cubs, a 3-game set against the Diamondbacks, and then a 3-game set against the Giants. Listen, it's not going to be getting any easier for this Nationals team. You have to take the wins when you can, especially when your rotation and your pitching has been so good in a game like yesterday. You have to figure out a way to manufacture runs. You have to figure out a way to steal bases and stay competitive within the confinements of the game. With these new rules, you can do that now. You can find ways to create and use these new rules to your advantage. When pitchers throw over twice an at-bat, guess what? Run. Take your chances. Call a hit and run. Go old school if you have to. And that's what the Nationals haven't done up to this point to capitalize on these opportunities to try and win games. The first 2 series, I understand. The Rays and the Braves are 2 of the best teams in all of baseball. But now, a 4-game set against the Rockies, you better at least win 2 of those games. Because now, after losing game 1 of it, you have 3 games to win 2 of those. You have Mackenzie Gore going today, then Trevor Williams, and then Chad Kuhl. Time is now. You have to start collecting some of these wins and adding some positive momentum to a once proud franchise, for being honest. And right now, we're just not sitting that way. And that is kind of the frustrating part of a fan like myself and you, wherever you are listening. So it's time to start winning. Simple as that. But now for some better things. Let's end on a good note because the Fredericksburg Nationals are back today. And guys, the Fredericksburg Nationals are, in my opinion, by far and away, the best team in the Nationals system. It's really not even that close. We're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, I have to tell you guys about our friends over on FanDuel. And guys, the NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is a perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. The Wizards are playing tonight. Guess what? Fade the Wizards because it's that easy. They're in tank mode. We've seen they have given up on the year. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And now we get back into it. As I said, the Fredericksburg Nationals make their opening day today. And that is the exciting part of this Nationals farm system. Because let me just name off some of the guys you will be seeing down in low A Fredericksburg. Jake Bennett, 2022 second round pick out of Oklahoma. You also got a former first round pick with Mason Denneberg. You may have not heard that name in a while because he was drafted in 2018 and he has been very injured so far. But again, he makes his debut, or not his minor league debut, but he gets back out there because we haven't seen too much over him since 2018 and 2019. Then you also have Yarlin Susanna, one of the Nationals' top prospects, who I believe will be in that top 5 prospect list by the year's end. Listen, you're throwing 103 miles per hour. You're really sitting about 100 to 101. You're 18 years old. He's young. He's got the pitches. And man, oh man, the ceiling is sky high for him. We'll talk about a lot about Yarlin Susanna as this season goes on. But again, it's just beyond the pitching as well, as this outfield for the Fredericksburg Nationals will be by far and away one of the better outfielders in all of minor league baseball. And I truly believe in that. And you're going to see even more of that specifically by the middle to the end of the year when you get guys like Christian Vaquero called up into the big leagues or into the minor leagues for him. He's still down in Florida. But just looking at this outfielder, Brenner Cox, a highly touted high schooler prospect the Nationals took in the middle rounds of last year's draft. You also have first round pick, top 5 pick, Elijah Green. And then you have second round pick in 2021 with Dalen Lyle. Dalen Lyle flashed a ton during spring training. And again, those 3 guys will be the mainstays. It's just a matter of time before one of them gets the boot up to high A, and then you'll see another top prospect with Christian Vaquero filling that role in whoever the Nationals decide to draft number 2 overall in the 2023 draft. Listen, the outfield is what you want to see. It's what we all want to see with this Fredericksburg Nationals team. Brenner Cox, a lot of talent there. A young kid who can be something. Elijah Green, who I have made the case in past shows has the highest ceiling of any prospect in minor league baseball. Dalen Lyle, again, someone who's got a plus hit tool. He's also got a little bit of power, and he can play a solid defensive corner outfield and even sometimes in center. We'll see where that lines up. But to also look at the infield, you have Armando Cruz, Brady House, Sammy Infante. These are guys who actually have an impact. In some cases, you could talk about multiple prospects in that infield, outfield, and as well as pitchers to go with the Nationals. And you can make that argument that they will be in the major leagues within the next few years and making a real difference. You can go down to Fredericksburg, see these guys, because this is where the excitement part comes in for the Washington Nationals. It's down in the farm system. They have a top 10 farm system in all of baseball, and it's only going to get better after this year's draft to see what they do, how they draft. Will they draft another pitcher? Who knows at this point? But to kind of highlight someone I don't think we talk about enough is Jake Bennett, the left-handed pitcher from Oklahoma. And this guy was a teammate with Cade Cavalli, obviously. Here's the thing about Jake Bennett. I think he's going to be a really fast riser. I think down in low A, you're going to see a ton of good stuff. He's got a solid changeup. He's got a solid fastball. And again, being that southpaw, that is kind of what the Nationals need. We need a young left-handed pitcher down in the farm system to actually develop. We've seen time and time again, second round picks in other organizations have developed. Can the Nationals do that with Jake Bennett? I think they can, and I think they will. Here's the thing about him that I really like. Coming out of college, he was someone who was talked about who could be a first round pick. He fell to the Nationals into the second round, and that is kind of where we get that high ceiling guy. And again, looking at Mason Denneberg, someone who's still young in his younger 20s, does he still have anything left in the tank? Maybe not as a starter at this point, but again, looking at him as a relief option down the road for this big league club, you could do that any day of the week. So to talk about the Fredericksburg Nationals, you will hear a ton of coverage on Locked On Nationals about that farm system because that is where the exciting part of this season begins. It's down at the farm. And I can tell you this, on Fridays, you're going to hear a lot of farm talk. Little farm system Friday. How about that? Thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network where you get your team every single day. And again, guys, thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. Let's see what Mackenzie Gore can do tonight, and let's see what the Nationals can do this weekend. I will talk to you on the flip side on Monday to discuss about this Colorado Rockies series. Hopefully we get some wins here because they ain't coming for free. I can tell you that. Thanks again, guys, and go Nats.